their way of thinking. So how do you see religion working in government? I know people like to say, church and state should be separate, but you can't. I don't think that to a degree you can, as far as like the formal church and the formal state, you're not going to have like, the Mormons controlling the government or the Catholics controlling the government, but the foundation on which people view the world is somewhat spiritual or philosophical. So you can't avoid it. So how do you see that working in the future?
Sure. Yeah. First, I want to affirm what you're saying through some examples. Historically, we've seen the governance, the economics, and the science of the day recurrently reconcile with the religion of the day. Mm-hmm. So great examples of this are in the history of Christianity. When Christianity first got going, the science of its day was Greek philosophy, Platonic Greek philosophy. What did we see happen in religion? The Neoplatonic philosophers and the Christians worked really hard to syncretize Christian religion with Neoplatonic philosophy. And that's when what would become the Catholic Church really got momentum, is once the two were syncretized. And later on, of course, like it always happens, science changed. In the Middle Ages, the science of the day changed from Platonic philosophy to Aristotelian philosophy. Ironically, Aristotle and Plato, of course, were pretty much contemporaries, but we lost the works of Aristotle in Europe for a long time. In fact, I think they were destroyed intentionally in many cases. And then a lot of people don't know this, but the Muslims brought it back to Europe for us, the Aristotelian works. Mm-hmm. The Muslim civilization was, in terms of science and politics and education generally, ahead of Europe for a long time. It was their golden age. And we, my ancestors, that's why I say we, my ancestors in Europe looked like fools in comparison with the scholars from North Africa in the Arab civilization. Anyway, eventually they were kind enough to bring the works of Aristotle back to my ancestors in Europe. And Europeans started really valuing those. They incorporated the ideas from Aristotle. The science of the day was Aristotelian, and guess what happened? The leaders, the leading thinkers of the Catholic faith and other faiths, but primarily the Catholic faith, that's what was powerful in Europe, started syncretizing with Aristotelian philosophy. And if you've never heard of the works, I know you have, but I'm speaking to your listeners. If you've never heard of the work Summa Theologica, written by Thomas Aquinas, then you should go read about it on Wikipedia. It's this gigantic theological work. And most of that work is about Thomas Aquinas's effort to integrate Christian theology with who he called the philosopher. And for him, the philosopher was Aristotle. So there was a bunch of tension between Aristotelians and Christians, but he fixed it. And then their tension went away, things went along. We're now in another phase of tension between Christianity and science. And that tension was introduced by probably most notably Charles Darwin, and then perhaps to some extent Albert Einstein and related works. So there's this new tension that has been generated. Christianity has felt tension from its traditional theologies that are more Aristotelian and Platonic. And you've got these new observations and theories from science coming from the likes of Darwin and Einstein. What are we going to do? Is religion suddenly going to die? No. What we're seeing now, especially in recent decades, is we're seeing people come up with ways to integrate the two again. So to your question more explicitly, what's the role of religion going forward? Well, religion going forward is going to fill the same kind of role it filled historically. To do that, though, it's going to have to evolve and incorporate the science of our day, like it always has before. And that's not a bad thing, and that's not a surprising thing. In fact, it would be surprising if it doesn't incorporate the science of our day. And what's the role that religion has filled for literally thousands of years since the historical dawn of humanity, as you've already pointed out? Well, I would characterize that role as one of being a social technology that provokes a strenuous mood. And in fact, I would argue that religion is the most powerful social technology that brings people together to common action to a strenuous degree of effort. It gets stuff done. And so when you have a religion that is aimed at very ugly, horrible, bad ideas, it gets those things done very well. And it's really ugly and horrible and bad. If you have religion that is reconciled with the most beautiful and good and true values and virtues and ideas that we have as humans, and when the aesthetic of religion has imbued those with power, you also get wonderful, amazing things done. A lot of people don't realize that many, probably most of the most influential and significant chains of hospitals and schools throughout Europe and North America, and probably other parts of the world too, are the consequence of religious organizations that originally founded them, funded them, organized them, built them up. And so while some people look back at the history of religion and want to focus on some very ugly things that have definitely happened, I don't want to detract from that. Religion has done bad things, but they don't sufficiently acknowledge the good things that religion has also done, the amazingly good things. So religion's a mixed bag, and that's because religion is a technology like all other technologies. It's not inherently good or evil. It's powerful. So it's up to us to ensure that we do our best as ethical agents to adopt religions and develop religions that are better religions, that will shape us into better people, our communities into better communities. And what is better? Well, that becomes a complicated issue, an ethical debate that a lot of people have. But I will say this, among transhumanists, it seems like we can make a pretty persuasive case that better is that which aims us toward achieving our superhuman potential in intelligence, of course, but not just in intelligence, primarily in compassion. If we can develop religions that will cultivate our group efforts and group support in our individual efforts to become intelligent and compassionate persons beyond present notions of intelligence and compassion, then I think we're in the right religion. I think that's the whole purpose. Ultimately, the right, best, most beautiful application of religion is to promote, to provoke us to that kind of future. And in a lot of ways, that is what I and my family get out of being Mormons. It's a powerful community that motivates us to act in certain ways, to reach out to people more than we would probably if it were just left to our own devices, to help people more than we would on our own, probably, to work harder to cultivate certain virtues in ourselves than we probably would otherwise. So it shapes us in particular ways with communal support and asks us to help support others around us doing the same thing toward becoming the kind of person that I associate with the idea of godhood, that many Mormons, and pretty much all Mormons, associate with the idea of godhood. And godhood in Mormonism has a lot in common with how the most ethical transhumanists would probably regard superintelligence. It's not just about power. It's not just about raw intelligence. It's about the application of that intelligent power towards pro-social ends, towards lifting us all up.
Yeah, and